Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I am so excited to introduce a guest that does some incredible work and is work unlike any other guest we have had on the podcast before. Ashley Spence is a motivational speaker, victim advocate, and founder of the DNA Justice Project, a nonprofit that focuses on educating the public and policymakers on the value of forensic DNA in the criminal justice system. When Ashley was a 19-year-old college student, she was the victim of a brutal home invasion and rape that nearly took her life. She never saw his face, and it was a cold case for 7 years until he was caught through a forensic DNA match. For Ashley, the levels of grief around this are deep, raw, painful, and complex, as you can imagine. And we dig into all of this in our conversation. And a little trigger warning here, as you just heard me mention, her story does involve a home invasion and a sexual assault that could be upsetting to hear. So just wanted to give you all a little warning before we get into this conversation. But truly, how Ashley has been able to process this and create such purpose with what she has been through will absolutely inspire you today. Ashley, welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. I know we were just talking a little bit before we started, and I truly mean this when I say I have not had anyone like you on the podcast before. I say that in the best way possible. And I think what you can offer people today is such an, unfortunately, probably unique perspective. You have had some very serious and scary things happen to you in your life. And I want you to be able to tell your story. So I'll hand it over to you in a second. But the work that you are doing and how you have empowered yourself, so it seems, to get into a line of work, if you will, an advocacy that, you know, so many people could be in your shoes and just kind of shut down and all the things. And you are just, from my perspective at least, taking the bull by the horns, and you are doing such incredible work. So I am just so grateful you are here today. And I just want to really welcome you because I'm so excited to get into this conversation.
Thank you so much, Tara. I'm really, as we kind of just mentioned, you know, grief comes in so many different ways. And, you know, I'm grateful that you have created a platform for all of us in our different walks of life. We all have our grief. We really do. And just being able to have an avenue that you don't feel so alone. I've learned by my work that just by speaking your story and hearing others, you feel connected. Even if we have different stories of grief, there's a similar sentiment or feeling of loss that we all feel.
Yes, absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. I say that often here. And even if it's funny, like I always say too, like, let's say, you know, I lost both my parents, right? So I'm like, even if someone else has like lost a mom or lost a dad, like there's so many like universal themes, I guess you could say, about grief that we can all feel across the board. There's many emotions or feelings and things that we might feel. We might feel loneliness, right? Sadness, fear, all these things. But it is such an isolating journey at times. And even when other people, you know, have gone through on paper the same thing as you know, it is still a very unique journey. So I just think finding community and hearing other people's stories just like yours, even if it's exactly the same or even if it's completely different, but you're, you know, making choices every single day to figure out how to move with that and move forward, for lack of a better term. And it's kind of like, okay, let's take baby steps to figure out like what now. And yeah, so this podcast, this community, all the things, we're all about that. So really excited to dig into this. So to get us started, I would love for you to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself. And I always like to open this up even to, because we'll get into the nitty gritty of your story and the work that you do. But I even laugh sometimes, you know, if things you like to do for fun, hobbies, fun facts about you, that anything you want to share to help everyone kind of get to know you a little better.
Yeah, I'm a mom now, which kind of fuels my work, but I found, you know, we'll go into my story, but I found such great healing in things like yoga for me was life-saving, being in nature. There's a trail. I live in Austin, so I'm a Texan, and
Love Austin.
I'm very busy with work and parenthood, but I always have to make time to, this is kind of funny, it's on top of my mind, but to attend to my physical and mental, emotional well-being. And so like getting out
Yes.
on like trail and getting the sunshine, or squeezing in a 45-minute workout. My friends can attest to this, and my fiance, if I don't take care of myself a little bit every day, I'm like a raging psychopath. I really am. Like rage just like runs through me. So
Oh my God.
many healthy ways to find outlets to feel good, you know,
Yeah.
mind, body, spirit.
I love that. Like, even though we're laughing and kind of joking about that, truly what you just said is so important. And we can talk about this kind of like later on in the episode as well, because one thing I definitely love to ask guests that comes on is like, what do you do to cope, to navigate the day-to-day life? So you've already given some great examples. So let's definitely dig back into that in a little while. But I mean, all jokes aside, like that stuff actually genuinely is so important. And I often recommend the same thing. However, it looks like in your life, right? And especially depending where people live. Also, when we're recording this, it's very cold for most of the US. So I understand. I'm almost joking, especially right now, like getting outside is probably like the last thing a lot of people want to do, but like just movement, right? Like you said, yoga, like some, having some practice that you can come back to help kind of like ground ourselves and also just give us like a little almost control in a time that can feel very out of control, as I like to say. So, yeah, 'cause grief wreaks havoc on our lives, as we know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, and it can be simple things like music, connecting
Yeah,
with someone that you love, or if you can go walk, even if it's cold, bundle up, get everything, get a little bit of fresh air just to like reset the nervous
just
system, because it can be very overwhelming. And grief
yes,
in different ways. You're having a great day, you think, and the next day you are like rock bottom. You feel like
yeah,
you've gone all the way back from the beginning. So it's
yeah,
honoring that. But for me, the tools of moving my energy literally out of my
mhm,
body is so powerful, because I can't. It gets stuck, especially in my line of work. I have to talk about everything that I've endured and try to
yeah,
persuade people to change laws based on this. I know it saved lives, but sharing my story and in a brief moment to people, and it can live in your body again a little bit. So
yeah,
I have to make sure that I clear it out so that I can show up, and just for myself, for my kids, for my fiance, for everybody in my life,
mhm.
friends, because otherwise we joke about it, but it manifests as like total rage and like
Ripple effect.
use if I don't. So that's something about me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That was like a fun fact about you, but also like a very, very helpful healing tool as well. We got a little 2 for 1 there. I love it. Amazing. Okay. Well, speaking about your story, I would love for you to share whatever you feel comfortable with as far as what you have been through. And then we can definitely get into how that has, gotten you into the line of work that you do now.
Well, thank you. And I do just like to always say that the topic can be challenging. I was a victim of sexual assault, so I
Yeah.
know
Good
there's
disclaimer.
that have been through that. And more than I could have ever imagined before I got into this work. But there's
Yeah.
something about having a safe space to be able to share this, and knowing like you're not alone. So if something
Mhm.
triggers something in you, I always like to think of something as our triggers as our greatest teachers of spaces we need to continue to work on to heal. So
Love
um,
that. So
it's like
true.
a place of love. But I was just 19 years old. I'm 40 now. So this was a long time ago, but it was in 2003, and I was a college student at Arizona State. And I was really excited. I moved from Texas, and I was one of my only friends that actually moved out of state to go to school. And my first year, I was having probably a little too much fun, but I just the idea of freedom was so awesome to me. I just loved it. I loved being on my own. And um, I went to school a little bit before my sophomore year started to move into my apartment and just hang out with my friends again, because everyone's all over. And
Right.
I was blessed with a very safe upbringing. So I never in a million years thought what happened could ever happen to me. But I
Mhm.
was a victim of a very brutal home invasion sexual assault while I was asleep in my apartment before school started. And I'm very lucky that I survived it. It was
Mhm.
very brutal, and I never saw whose face it was. I could never see who did it. Um, I I was very glad that I survived, but he did threaten if I told anybody he would come back and he would kill me. But I immediately worked with detectives and, you know, it was all over the news, but I didn't realize at the time in that moment, simultaneously, I was losing my identity and I was becoming this like victim that's plastered all over the news and, you know,
Right.
trying to find closure. And there just wasn't. So I ended up dropping out of school. The fear was so overwhelming. And I moved to Newport Beach, California. And then I ended up relocating back to my home state of Texas. But it was when I moved back to Texas, so 7 years after my attack, that I got a shocking call. Was it a DNA match in the case? And I couldn't believe it because I had kind of given up hope, you know, after all that time. And ironically, I moved to Newport Beach to escape this monster from Arizona
Right.
State, thinking that I was going to the ocean. I'm getting far away. And I ended up moving randomly to the very city this guy lived. I found out after the fact. So I know it's crazy.
Stop. Oh, I have chills. Oh my God.
So he was arrested. I don't know if you've ever been to Newport Beach in California. It's like a tiny little beach.
Yes.
Okay, it's like
Yeah.
the town. It's closed. It's so cute. Um, he was arrested on 41st Street and I lived on 40th Street. So literally 1 block from where I lived all those years. And he was trying to break into a home where 3 young girls lived. And the police officer
No
saw him. I
way.
know. And he resisted the officer's arrest, which is a felony. And they are one of 19 states that collect DNA at the point of felony arrest. So because they had that law, they swabbed his sheet, they put it into our national DNA database, and it hit and matched back to my case and multiple others across state lines. He primarily preyed on college-age women. He was a very violent serial predator, and you know, DNA. He was extradited to Arizona, and we went to trial, and he's now in prison for 137.5 years. So
Yes. Oh my
yeah,
God. Thank God.
yeah. So it's been
Wow.
quite a journey. I, you know, trial didn't happen until 13 years after my attack. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
long.
Where do I start with the questions? Well,
I know.
this is a lot to unpack. Okay. First of all, well, okay, let me also preface this for guests listening. One of the reasons that I was so interested and excited to have you on is because I am, and I hope this doesn't come off as in like a fangirl sort of way. I am fascinated by forensics and like I watch forensic files, like I'm gonna say, and I don't want this to sound insensitive, but like true crime, understanding the mindset of someone who commits crimes like this, just all of that is fascinating to me, not in like a, ooh, this is like a juicy way. It's like it's almost so mind-blowing what people are capable of and the way that people are truly just so purely evil. Um it anyway, it's very interesting to me. Um, what I also now though am so fascinated by and am so happy about is that we are getting into a time where forensics, and you can speak to this better than anybody, I'm sure. So I want to ask you about this at some point, but where forensics and that science is getting better and better, and more murderers and predators and all of these people are being caught, which is thank God, like truly thank God, even if it's years later, which I definitely want to get into as well, because I can only begin to imagine having to go that long, maybe that entire time, not even thinking or knowing that there was ever going to be an answer, and how you begin to even navigate life after that. And we're going to get into that. But anyway, just want to preface all of that because that is, again, we've never had someone like you come on this podcast and talk about this who has unfortunately had something so absolutely traumatic like this happen. So first of all, thank you so much for your vulnerability and the work that you do, which we will get into. But if just taking it back a little bit, I don't want you to feel the need to go into the nitty gritty of that experience. Of course, I don't want you to. I'm sure you relive it enough without me having to ask about it. But I remember you either saying, I don't know if you just said this or I were prior to us talking. You never saw this person's face. Is that correct? Like so. I guess was this in the middle of the night? Like, just walk me through again. We don't have to get nitty gritty here, but like just those.
with my girlfriends that night. And it's so wild because I remember talking to my mom on the phone and it's so vivid to me. And I do
Mm,
a lot of talking about intuition and, you
yeah.
know, I had this feeling when I talked to her and the sun was setting, and it was like a pit of my gut sinking, like a sharp inner knowing that something was very, very terribly wrong. And
Oh my
it wasn't like anxiety. I think a lot of us know anxiety is like flighty.
yeah.
It's not stable. It lives in the chest for me a little bit and it's anxious, right?
This
This is
was like
like
gut
calm,
for you.
totally
Yeah.
calm, deep. Like, and it was so strong that I didn't want to hang up the phone, but I did. And I told
Oh
my mom
my
I
God.
loved her. I went out that night. My friends came back to my apartment and, we got late. One of our friends talking about grief, she had tragically lost her boyfriend in high school. And I mean, we were 19, so it was very
Oh my
young and she's still processing it. So we, I
yeah.
got late and we were just consoling each other like friends do. And there were a few
Mhm.
times I just said, why don't y'all stay here? You can stay on my couch. You can sit, we can show the bed, whatever. You all can stay here. It's getting late. And
Yeah.
we just eventually decided they needed to go home. There was sorority rush stuff in the morning. And
Mm.
so they took taxis and went home. And I went to bed as I always did. I was asleep in my home, but I always slept with like a pillow behind my head. And like I would sleep on my belly. It just like kept noise out and light out. And
Yeah.
um, I just never thought anything of it. But while I was asleep, he very violently like smothered my face, and I don't need to go into the details for everybody, but it was
No, yeah.
it was horrific, and it was for hours, but it's one of those things, and some people don't understand. It's like survival. Like my survival was freezing and just
Mhm.
like trying to
Oh, yeah,
live. And I knew if
yeah.
I then, but it's like that was my survival instinct of just you have to let this happen and try to live. And I'm so
Yeah.
blessed that I did survive. I did.
Oh my god. And you just said those hours that he
Yes,
did
it
this?
was very it's weird. I think about grief now, and it started in the process of that when I realized I couldn't like
Yeah.
wake myself up and it was reality. And
Oh my
then it
god.
started like when the law enforcement officer finally came and he saw me standing in the parking lot, and like he like mouthed the words when he saw me because I was covered in, and he was just like, "Oh my God." And it was so weird because I felt myself float out of my body. I'm not kidding. And like
Mhm.
it was like I was looking down on the scene of a movie that I couldn't process. Like everything in my memory was like from above. It's really
Right.
wild. It
Yeah,
was a decision, I think, to help me survive the pain, but like
absolutely.
it was very intense. Very intense.
Totally disassociate. Oh my god, I'm, like, on the verge of tears, like, hearing all of this. I mean, no one should have to endure that. That's amazing. Well, first of all, and I also so I definitely wanna get into kinda, like, what happened next. It sounds like you went to authorities immediately, which I wanna truly commend you for, and maybe you know this more than I do or even stats on this, but I would imagine that not everyone has the courage or whatever to go to the police, especially because you said that he like threatened you that if you were to talk or go to that he would come back or do it again. So
He
you were
told me he
just
would
like,
kill me. He said he would kill me. He said he would come back and kill me. And we know he has multiple victims. He had a shed behind his home full of like ID cards and underwear from all over the world that he
no,
collected.
so he murdered people as
Serial.
well.
And his sister came to trial, and that's a whole nother emotional story. But um, and she asked the judge to never let her brother see the light of day. She said she had to grow up with him, and so she became a detective. And they're certain he's murdered people, and he's gotten away with it.
Oh
So I
my
mean, it's definitely a scene from, as you're saying, true crime. It's like I lived that, and it's so. I advocate now for stronger DNA laws, which we'll get into. But the reason is
yeah.
because we all think that we're protected. No one thinks this really could ever happen to them. I
Oh yeah.
never thought this could happen to me, in a million years. And it did, and it can. But there are ways that we can keep our children safe. There are ways that we can stop this in its tracks. And so that's what I'm trying to advocate for now, to put my pain into to hope to help me process the grief. Advocating for
Right.
victims and for forensic DNA laws now has been a very key to my processing the grief, to try to
Absolutely.
transmute it into like hope and change protection for others.
Yeah. You're channeling that into something that is for such good and is gonna help so many people. Oh my gosh. So talk to me a little bit about so next steps, right? So it sounds like, law enforcement was involved. Can you tell me, well, again, I don't want to pry too much, so please only share what you're comfortable with. But what was it specifically forensically? Were they able to was there multiple things as far as like DNA goes that they were able to like save and then retest later?
So what happened was I like broke out of my window because the guy had stolen my phone, and I banged on my roommate's door on the master bedroom, and her and her boyfriend came out, and I'm like, call 911 screaming. So I waited outside, and so I
They were
didn't,
there?
they were there. He had built like a barricade in front of their door so that he could hear. God,
Oh
who
my
knows?
God.
It was crazy, but they're shocked too. And what I will say is assaults like these, they don't just start with the victim, they break down communities, they break down the sense of safety and security. And it's so wrong, for college. When you look at it, we were so young. We were
Yes.
19, you know,
19.
19, you're not, your brain's not even fully developed yet. So
Yeah.
processing that is just, that's another level. So I waited, and I was very blessed with an incredible first responding officer. And I know that's
Yeah.
not always the case, but there are many good
Right.
ones too. And mine was phenomenal. And I
Oh,
developed,
good.
kind of guided me. He knew that we didn't, but I didn't see anyone. So I needed to go have a rape kit done. I knew nothing about that. I wasn't into, I didn't even know if CSI was on at the time. I didn't, and it wasn't talked about. No one talked about this stuff. I didn't know what to do. And I remember he said, we have to get you down to a clinic to have your exam, the sexual assault nurse examination. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I just said, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to shower. I'm going to brush my teeth. I feel disgusting. I feel absolutely wretched. And, I wanted to just feel some sense of normalcy and cleanliness in my body. And
Get
it
it
was
off.
you
Yeah.
can't, you can't. And it
Oh,
broke my heart, and I'm so grateful for him. And so what I do want to say is, I hope nobody listening ever goes through this or has, but if you do, you can get to a sexual assault nurse clinic, but you want them to be trained. So there's an organization called RAINN, RAINN, and they
okay.
have all across the country. You can go on their website and you can find like these safe houses. Some of them are safe houses, some of them are just trained hospitals.
Mhm.
And by going to get the exams done, it doesn't mean that you have to press charges. Okay. So I think this is
Okay.
important for people to understand.
Yeah.
Does mean is you will start your journey of healing. They will look at your entire body. They will give you any medications you will need, any mental wellness stuff that you need to talk about. Like, you're in a safe space. But for me, I didn't, everything was so wild that I didn't question it. Like, I immediately, even though he threatened my life, I'm like, call 911, go right in there.
Yeah.
It was just kind of being guided into these different stages. And I can tell you,
Mhm.
my forensic nurse was such an angel, and not everyone has that. But her name's Jennifer. And we're actually friends now. We've been to wine country together. Okay, talk about life being weird. But we
I was like,
reconnected.
"That's where I am." That's crazy.
Reconnected after trial. She's an amazing human. Dedicated her life to this. I can't even imagine. But
Oh,
anyways, at the time, she did her job so well, and she was asking, is this okay? And she made me feel safe in a very vulnerable and not safe environment, coming from
yeah.
that sort of trauma physically. And I don't remember the hours of photographs and DNA collection. I remember just that she made me feel protected, and she was a blessing to me because I was able to sit through it. And they ended up getting saliva off my chest that would end up being the final factor that would get his DNA that caught him. And had she not
Okay.
done it so well, had I not had the courage to do that, he would still be out there today. He would, because he had multiple victims, but a lot of them didn't come forward because they were terrified. And I understand that. And then there were a few
Right.
trials after mine, but my DNA evidence was strongest. So they decided my case goes first. So just my case alone, he's in prison for 137.5 years.
That's amazing. I mean, God, I wish he was convicted in every
Yeah.
single one. But I mean, but the fact in your bravery and your courage and being able to do that with the support of others for sure, but like this is so comes down to you and just being so brave and just going with your instincts. It's so clear that you are very in touch with your intuition and your instincts, which is amazing, and I love that so much. And we can even talk about that. But um, yeah, I'm just that's incredible. And I was wondering, like, kind of what it was. So was it how does that process kind of work now? Do you have sort of like a little glimpse into like how they can do they just continuously retest things every once in a while? Like what kind of why now so to speak, or when it actually
So
happens? Like,
you will have they'll collect crime scene evidence, that they'll put into, it's called the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS. That's our
okay,
national DNA database.
POTUS, right?
And
Yeah,
it houses the local databases, the state databases, which comprises the national DNA database. Okay, so
right.
if there was, crime scene evidence, all that from unsolved cases, it goes into that. But rape kits
Yes.
also. So if there's any evidence from the rape kit, that goes and lives in there. So you can do great jobs of like clearing backlogs, testing the kits. But what we've realized now is if you're not getting the DNA in the database, then you're never going to get the hits. So because they have this law in California that only 19 states have, okay, just 19. My home state of Texas became the 19th in 2023. And in its first year, we solved 1,005 cases that would have been otherwise unsolved. We just got the numbers. I mean, it's huge. And it's also infuriating that every state is not doing this. I mean, I've been to West Virginia 4 times now, 4 years in a row. And we passed through committee yesterday to get them to collect for certain violent felonies, not even every single felony. Okay. But, and I'm still getting pushed back by the same people. And I played really nice recently, but now I'm like, I don't know. Do I like go
Not to play
now and put the names out there? Because, well, all jokes aside, I'm like, we are not harming people by doing this, but we are harming. There's a case where we would have had 8 homicides and 2 sexual assaults that we know of prevented had we had this. And there's case after case after case. And you have people saying, well, our freedom's more important, our privacy and freedom are more important than prevention. And to me, it's just, that's the part that frustrates me. And so I'm on one because I'm in the height of legislative session right now. And I'm
please. Oh my God.
But then you get it in Texas, then you get good people too. There are good people fighting for it. They're really good. You see it work. But so we need to be getting and hitting the DNA in the database to get the hits. And these are repeat violent predators. The majority of them are not stopping. We also can exonerate people. I was certain that it was someone that I went to college with. I thought there was no chance in the world that this was a stranger and a stalker, someone 20 to 30 years older than me. I just didn't think that was possible. That did not. And there was a guy that I went to college with that was, kind of gave me weird vibes, if I can be honest. And he had been in our apartment with some friends, with my roommate, like 2 days before. And then he called my apartment at 3 a.m. And so in my head, I'm like, totally this guy. Okay. So 100%, like your brain has to make sense of something like this. And so I said, sure. So finally I had to like call him with detectives on the phone, and he didn't want to give up his DNA, but he finally did. They collected DNA from over 50 people, and we got it back, and it took a few months, and it wasn't a match, a match. And I was shocked, but I think about how important DNA evidence is, because what if it was like friend James Tillman? He got put in prison for 18 and a half years from a photo ID of a sexual assault and kidnapping that he never committed, and they never tested the DNA. They finally tested it, and he was the first man to be exonerated in Connecticut through DNA. But you look at that, just the injustice that he went through. 18 and a half years. I can't imagine.
Oh my God, that's so wrong. Yeah.
So exonerates those. So I fight for innocent people that should never spend in prison. And preventing these crimes. We want to get these people off the streets. Like, we are just allowing them by not shutting down these collection loopholes in our, state to state. As we know, in my case, my guy was driving down state lines. He didn't stay in one area. But thankfully
I was wondering about this. So it was truly random, like just predator, just but almost like literally passing through, essentially.
He would take jobs as a painter and just odd jobs. He traveled a lot. He went to the Olympics, and just he was everywhere. But it's very, that's why it's so important that every state does this, because had he been arrested in Arizona, where he was going down and raping these young college girls, he would still be free to rape and harm other women, because they would not have swabbed his cheek for that felony offense that he was arrested for. So they're not getting caught for the big crimes. They are getting caught for lower level felonies along the way, so we have to get them early. And we're not saying like for a traffic stop, swab the cheek. I would love everybody at first, but that's that's not okay. I get it. That's an intrusion. Okay. But for a felony arrest, you can be able to have your DNA expunged out of the database if you're found not guilty, destroyed. It makes total sense. It's crazy to me that we don't do it everywhere.
That's wild. Oh my God. I can see why you were so I'm going to say worked up. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, what you were so like advocating for this so hard. This is insane to me. And watch the documentary. Like I hear of these things, and now to have you, who I would definitely say is like an an expert, not necessarily just because of what you've been through, but like clearly you are so inundated in this work and you ride so hard for it. To hear, someone like you talking about this as well, it's just like, oh my God. So I guess just take me now through, okay, so you go to the police, they take DNA and all the things. Essentially, what was next for you? What did life look like? Obviously, you said you moved to Newport. What brought you to Newport, by the way?
Life, it was so weird because overnight my life was shattered, like totally
Of course.
shattered. And
Yeah.
it was so unexpected. And so I worked really hard to try to get closure, and I tried to go to school. It was like a week later. I was all bruised up still, and I was like, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to go to school, even though I didn't know who it was. And I sat down in class, and the fear of letting anyone being behind you, then it's just like
Yeah.
paralyzing. And I couldn't see behind me, and so I didn't know if he was behind me. He told me he would kill me if I
So
told anyone.
scary.
It's all news. So I like ran out of school in a panic attack, and eventually it just was too much. I had to drop out, and my friend who I had spoken of earlier, Gianna, who lost her boyfriend in high school, she was kind of having didn't feel quite at peace in Arizona. Wanted we just wanted to start fresh, and so we thought, we're both Pisces. We were born one day apart, and her sister lived in Newport, and literally over Christmas break. So this was about 6 months, I guess, half a year after it happened. We just went early when no one was there. And our poor friends, we Irish goodbye to them, but that was kind of, we just wanted to get out. We didn't want to have any like comments on it. So we just packed up all our stuff. And then
Oh my God.
it was almost like a Thelma and Louise moment. Like she's driving,
Yeah.
we're blaring music, the windows are down, and I see like the you're leaving the state of Arizona sign in the rear mirror, and we're driving to the
I
ocean.
love this for you.
Like this we didn't know where we were going, but we just knew that we were ready to start
Wow.
fresh.
Weirdly poetic. Yeah.
It also, like, I decided I was never going to speak about what happened to me. I said, I'm not
Mm.
going to be the victim anymore. I'm
Yeah.
so tired of this. I just want to be normal. Like, I don't want people to look at, like, I just want to be Ashley. Like, I was
Yeah.
grieving that loss, like that was totally
Yes.
taken away from me. And
Yep.
so I decided I wasn't going to talk about it all. And, that took me down such a scary path. I just started self-medicating with, massive amount of Xanax. I went to see a therapist. Didn't even want to tell the therapist what happened to me. I said I was scared to fly and that I was traveling all the time, but I wasn't. So I was taking that. I was self-medicating with alcohol, NyQuil during the day because I couldn't sleep at night. And it got so bad that there were 2 different times that I woke up on my our little beach house couch, and I felt like someone literally slammed my head with a bag of bricks, and my eyes were fuzzy, and I tried to just read dating. I couldn't see, but I saw something on my wrist, and it was a hospital band with my name on it. And I mean,
Oh
the
my
scariest thing was,
God.
I remember the ambulance picking me up from the local bar because I nearly drank myself to death. I didn't remember them clearing me to go home, like no memory of that. And my life was absolutely spiraling out of control. And I will say, when we don't heal our grief and our traumas, like I've talked to Gianna and everyone in my life at that time, and it's been a process. But like not only do we hurt, but like we're unintentionally causing harm on the ones we love. Like that chaos they had to live with, and the pain that I caused, and it was because I didn't even care about myself. So how could I care about what I was putting others through? And it sounds
Right.
that's why it's so important that we heal these wounds, because then we start hurting others without, and to give myself grace. I didn't have the tools, but like I think
Yeah.
it's important to
Yeah.
recognize.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, that's so scary. Jesus, you've been through so much, such a short, such a young age. Oh my God. So, was it one of those situations with alcohol and everything involved that you did, like, was it an aha moment for you kind of, or was it, you were sort of just like, I can't not talk about this because there's
No,
very different ends of the spectrum. Not talking. Okay. I'm not talking about it now to doing the work that you do where you
totally opposite.
probably have to relive that and talk about it often. So yeah, like what did getting into this work
No,
look like?
I always joke because my mom did yoga like all the time growing up, and I thought it was so weird. She would like be like
Yeah.
watching David Letterman, though, and like this was before Lulu and like yoga studios now in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up opening one. It's ironic, but I thought it was the weirdest thing
Oh,
ever.
that's
I would
great.
never do it. And my roommate Gianna was like, "Look, I'm going to this class in Yoga Works in Newport. Come with me." And I was like, "No." And finally I'm like, "Okay." Her
Oh,
patience running really thin on me. Bless her heart and her boyfriend. I love you guys. But
oh my
so
God.
I was like, "Okay, I'll go." I really went more like for her, I think, than me. And what's
Yeah.
interesting now is I look at like, not only was I detached from my body, I felt like very, very disgusted with it. It felt foreign. I felt like I was living in this thing. It wasn't mine anymore. I don't know how to explain it. And
Yeah.
so going to yoga now, I realized it caused me a lot of anxiety. Well, because I had to go sober, but also um, I, you have to connect to your breath and your body and your
Yeah.
heart. So like, it's like, and you're not going to like a gym where there's news and you can watch stuff and distracted. It's like you are
No
on your
distractions.
just connected. And I did not want to go, but I did. And our yoga teacher, Tony, who I love, she was the reason that I did, because I went to like the very back corner and I didn't want anyone to see me. And I wanted to leave so bad. And then in comes this teacher. And it felt like she was like an angel. She had this like, big
Oh,
smile and tan skin and big curly hair. And she started class by saying, she was sharing that her husband was going through cancer. And she was like, we're all coming here from different walks of life. So just meet yourself where you're at today. So immediately it kind of just created this safe space. And I kept going
wow.
back, but just to her classes. And I never introduced myself. And I remember there was like a point where I'm in Warrior Two and my feet were like rooted down into the ground. Have you done yoga?
Oh
Have
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. And then like my arms were extended out from my chest, and my arms felt strong, and I was sweating, and I felt like this surge of power from my chest that
I
I
love
thought had been
that.
taken. And I thought it like was like a lightning bolt almost. It was like, whoa, I didn't know.
Oh
I
my
felt so
God.
insecure and scared, and this was powerful. And so I was like,
Mhm.
whoa, amazing. And I'm balancing an airplane pose on one leg, looking at one spot, sober and unmedicated, having to get my bearings and be clear headed. And
Yeah.
um, it was life changing. And the seventh or eighth yoga class, she put Let It Be by the Beatles on the loudspeaker for Shavasana, which I never was able to chill out at. I have such envy for everyone that would rest, because I'd be like, I'm never closing my eyes again and not in a straight face. And sure, I was so tense. But she played that song, and I just like, tears just started rolling out of my eyes onto the mat. And for the first time since I was attacked, it wasn't this like depths of despair and
Oh my
pain.
God.
It was surrender. And like, I thought maybe I'm going to be okay. Maybe I'll never have closure, but maybe I'm going to make it. And I was able to close my eyes and unmedicated find rest. And yoga saved my life. I mean, it truly did, because it got me back on my feet. I graduated college, things I thought that were unattainable, got a job, and ended up moving
Wow.
back to Austin. And I ended up opening up yoga studios here that I had for almost 10 years. And I still didn't talk about it though. Okay. This whole journey, I still didn't
Right.
talk about it. Like to anybody. My own brother, who was very close to me, he was 6 years younger than me.
Oh,
I didn't want to damage a sense of safety and security that we all should feel. But
yeah.
so it was a hard journey.
Oh my God. I so hear you on. I'm so glad you brought up yoga. And I think a lot of people are like, okay, yeah, yoga, breath work, meditation, like, okay, like, it's like buzzwords. No, like seriously. But I think what you just described and this incredible moment that sounds like it kind of happened with you, and maybe it wasn't like such an aha moment, but it was enough of one for you to realize, like, no, okay, I am grounded. I am still here. I still have a life to live, like, and just clawing your way out of this darkness a little bit. But it sounds like it was such a pivotal moment for you. um and it just so happened to be in a practice like this. So I'm constantly telling people to get in touch with your body again. And grief, as it does nothing if not disconnect us, and certainly makes us, well, especially in your case, totally lose sense of our sense of self and our identity. And there's so much confusion, and it's like, okay, what now? And there is just so much like survival mode, and it is just trying to get through the day. And people do turn to self-medicating one way or another. Because I was wondering, I literally, when I first heard your story, I was like, I don't know how this woman ever slept again or felt even remotely comfortable at night and all of that. So, I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how long this road was and
Yeah.
has been for you in that regard.
Yes. And I when I first started, so I didn't start speaking about this until after trial, really. And what
Okay.
got
Yeah,
me,
I was gonna ask, like, kind of when did you start speaking about this?
right.
So, okay, it's like you're feeling a little better, but then still not talking about it. So, yeah, what was that turning
So I
point?
moved to Boston, and then in 2010, I got the call. So 7 years after my attack, and that there was a DNA match. And my husband at the time, we're no longer together, but we have made a very beautiful co-parenting relationship. And
Mhm.
he went with me to trial and all these amazing things. I'm forever grateful to that. And
That's great.
um, we, moved back to Austin. I get the call, and then I still kind of shoved it back behind because it was just,
Okay.
that's a whole other thing. But the shock, and then I felt like rage, kind of, because I'm like, I've literally pulled myself out of the depths of hell
Uh,
just to try to be normal and just to try to like live a somewhat normal life. It'll never be normal. And I felt
yeah.
sadness. I was relieved, but I was sad because I thought, now I have to reopen this.
Relive this.
And
Yeah.
I worked so hard just to be normal, or felt,
Mhm.
whatever that is, but just to feel anything. And,
Right.
so I still put it to the back of my mind. And eventually, so I opened my yoga studio, and I thought, I'm never going to tell anybody what I've been through, but if I can give one person a pathway of their own healing of grief and life. And I want this to be the cheers bar of yoga studios. And I want you to know everyone's name, and I want them to feel like family. And people come there
That's
through their,
amazing.
like, they would lose family members, and guess what? They would come straight to our yoga studio because they knew
Yeah.
that they could be treated with care and love. And to me, I'm like,
Oh,
that's going to be my gift, and I'm not going to ever talk about what happened. Well, life had a different plan for me, so I,
clearly.
yeah, I go to, I get the call from the prosecutor, and at this point, we had given birth to our son, Charlie, and we had to get an IUI. I didn't think I could naturally get pregnant. I thought that I had
Okay.
cysts, everything, all those things. So we had to do two of the IUIs, so not IVF, but it's a lesser thing that they do.
Mhm.
And so I started having symptoms right after the prosecutor called me. He said, there's no more delays. We're going to trial in May of 2015, Ashley. Okay, so this is 2003 that happened. This is May of 2015.
Oh my God.
Young, and my studio was finally turning a profit. It was a long road, and I remember I started saying, I was like, well, my son is so young. This is really unnatural. I don't know if I can come to trial because I can't be away from him. And my studio is finally turning a profit. We've
Yeah.
been in the debt, mounds of debt, and we're finally getting there. Our studio is finally packed. Like, I don't think I can come. My community needs me. My family needs me. And he said, well, I just want you to know the most this guy can get, because my DNA evidence was the strongest again. So
Yeah.
it's 10 years. And I told him, I'm like, I have to let you know. And so I hung up the phone, and literally I didn't think about it for a bit. And I thought, I'm not going. But mostly I was so scared
Oh,
because
I bet.
you,
Yeah.
like, it's only on DNA evidence. And I never saw this guy. He told me he would kill me. Now I have a son to protect. Like, I don't think I can go back. What if they find him not guilty, and then he knows that I live in Austin? And
Right.
so
So many things to think about.
and then I find out I'm pregnant, and this time totally on our own. And I remember I called because I thought I was having cysts again, which can make your periods irregular. And I called the doctor, and I'm like,
Right.
maybe cysts again, and they're like, well, you have to take a pregnancy test first. And I'm like, I'm not pregnant, literally. And they were like, you just have to before we can make your appointment. And I'm like, okay. So I got a pregnancy test. I took it, dropped my kid off at daycare, went to teach yoga and work at the studio. Didn't even check it. Came back that night, and it's positive. And I'm like,
Oh,
what?
what is
And
life?
but then I found out I was having a girl. And in that,
Oh,
it just grounded me. And I was like, you are going to trial because you're going for your daughter. Like,
you're
it made
doing
it
this for her.
bigger than
Ah,
me, his daughter. So I was very pregnant with my daughter, and I had to go to trial, which was crazy. But she gave me strength. Like, I didn't think I
yeah.
can do it. I just put my hand on my belly, and I felt like, this like
This is
powerful
for you, kinda.
thing that
Yeah.
just like radiated through me. And, he was given the maximum amount of time in Arizona. So the other victims decided not to pursue their trials. I totally understand that.
Yep.
And I started to feel, very grateful. But then I was like, wait, every victim deserves to have this justice. And I
Yep.
can't live in silence anymore. And, I started to confide one on one with women at the yoga studio. And I mean, we were so close and had been close for years. We were young. A lot of them were in their 20s. At this point, I'm in my early 30s. And, um,
Mhm.
you know, it was not, there's statistics that say 1 out of 6 American women will be the victim of attempted or completed rape. And I mean, I think people listening, most people know, it was 7 out of 8 for me though. And I couldn't believe that. It was 7 out of 8 of the young girls that I knew and I loved in turn shared a story that they either hadn't talked to anybody about or hadn't shared in years. And it broke my heart. Like the
Oh my
grief, I'm just like,
God.
we have to talk about this. And this was
Yeah.
before the Me Too happened. And I felt like it was inadequate because it didn't really do
Right.
much for survivors. Okay. So I started to talk about it, and then I got really freaked out when I learned that not every state collected DNA at the point of all felony arrest, which is how my perpetrator was caught. All 50 do get
Yeah.
convicted, but we're missing the majority. The majority of them actually aren't getting convicted of felonies. So it kind of was like this storm of all these things that I felt this passion that I needed to start sharing it. So one by one, I would. Now I speak to like forensic scientists, to law enforcement, forensic nurses, victims, politicians, anyone who will listen, listen. But I really had, out of all the heartache, I had a lot of angels working my case. And so I want that
Yeah.
to be the standard for every victim, every single one.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that so much. I mean, yeah, as you were telling your story, I mean, you are a critical component to this and getting the justice. And like I said earlier, having the courage to do what you did. It is so clear though that having a good detective, or, if DNA is needed to be, received, like just anywhere along the line, those people, whatever the position they're in, approaching it with compassion, and that this is another soul, another human life in front of them. This is not just another thing of their job that they have to do, like, which I'm sure it can feel that way, because I would imagine, and my father-in-law was in law enforcement for 30 years, and has some trauma from that, definitely. And I think in a lot of those jobs they probably disassociate in some ways and things too, and to not, but it's so clear that the people that were working with you, took you seriously and cared. And it's baffling to me that that is not the standard. That like people don't even get that bare minimum. Some of the time, most of the time, maybe. I don't even know. I mean, that's
Critical,
sickening to me in and of itself.
critical. And
But
that there is a key. And what I tell people is like the first responding officer, you have no idea how important that is, but every person along the
yeah,
way has to treat them
yes,
with compassion and dignity and respect. And, because without one of those pieces working, you don't, it not only are you coming out of, I think, one of the most horrific attacks that someone can have to endure after living it, but then you get victimized in a way of like not being treated with dignity, or feeling
yeah,
shame, or not being respected, or convinced to take another path, to not pursue it, or it's too hard, or it's too this or too that. Like, we just need people that are trained in this, and really it is trauma informed, and that can treat victims when they're coming out of these horrible situations with
yeah.
kindness and compassion. There, it's imperative. It is imperative.
Yeah. It's like, imagine if that was a family member of yours, or if someone has a child, their child. Like, I have a 1-year-old daughter now as well. And so when you were mentioning your daughter, I was like, oh my God, it hits
Mhm.
home on another level that it already did, but now especially. But you also don't have to have a child to have that compassion and empathy. It's just, I always say, like, a lot of people are really quick to say, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what you're going through. I can't put myself in your shoes. You can actually. Of course, there are some paths that you truly, unfortunately, have to live to really understand, right? But if we can take a moment to actually show that empathy and actually put ourselves in those shoes, as I tried to do, as you were talking, and just even begin to imagine how horrifying what someone like you has been through. You can imagine it. I think a lot of people don't want to, or they
Mhm.
block it out, or that, right? Because who wants to experience that horror and that
Right,
pain and everything that is, for sure, it's very easy for us to check out. So this is
right.
like my call to everyone, like, don't check out. Like,
Mhm.
be as brave as you were, like, hold that space. which you have clearly done and have been doing in so many different ways at your yoga studio for other victims as well, and advocating, for people as you have. So again, just so many kudos to you, to say the very least, and everything that you do, and the way that you hold space for people, wherever you go, really. A couple questions just to kind of finish this up, because I really, you've already said so many really powerful and really amazing things as far as, where the legislation is and where it needs to go and anything. And I want to just give you one more opportunity to say, if there's anyone listening here who, I don't know, has any sway with law somehow, or know someone who does, or just anyone out there listening who, feels strongly about this and like wants to help advocate, like, what do you want people to know? What can people do if they want to help? Like, how can we all get more involved to get this,
Thank you. Okay, so
going?
I
And
have
I'll
the
be saying,
foundation.
like,
Yes. And so it's DNA Justice Project on social media or my website. You can check it out. I need
mhm,
boots on the ground. I need people writing into legislators. I recently wrote a book called Silent Witness, How DNA
mhm.
Uncovered Truth and Empowered My Healing. And I want to start a movement of pass it along. So if you've gotten my book and you read it, you can either pass it to another woman that might need it, or send it to your legislator with a little note saying, this is why this is important. I need mothers. It's not even just women that this has happened to. This happens to everybody.
Of
So
course.
I need,
Yeah.
I need, I need everyone that feels passionate about this, not just to provide justice. There are still victims that are waiting 40, 50 plus years. We're closing cases out. So there's hope in this. We can prevent these repeat offenders from harming our children, and we can exonerate
Mhm.
those that are wrongfully sitting in our prisons. And it is the right thing to do. So if you are passionate about it, every state, so I travel state to state and I go, work with hopefully senators or representatives that sponsor the bill that bring it forward. Like
Mhm.
in Georgia, Tennessee right now, or Oregon, West Virginia. So all these different states, you can stay updated on the work that I'm doing. And then I am working on getting little templates out of how you reach out to your representative or
Mhm.
legislator, what to say. And it can be very simple. You can make a phone call that takes a few seconds, that's just saying you support the bill number. And I'll have all that on my website and my social media
Right.
so that you can get involved. And it does change, but I would love that because they want to hear from people that live in their states. And I think all of us want to know that they are doing everything possible to keep our children safe, or
Mhm.
yourself protected, and fighting for justice. And this legislation does exactly that.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think some, unfortunately, probably a lot of people are like, what does my voice really do? Like, I don't know if I'm really going to be heard. I don't know if they're going to take me seriously. Like, if there is enough people doing, even just one person doing it, but if there is enough people, there are power in numbers. That is like a real thing. Obviously, that's how
It
votes go.
really is how they get stuff done. And I didn't realize it. I
Yes.
used to be very nervous about like calling or writing
Yeah.
emails or but I'm like, no, that's how we have to get stuff done. Like
Yeah.
and it
Action.
takes a village of people everywhere that we go in order for this to even get traction. It does. It takes a
Yeah.
village.
Yeah, and for them to take it seriously, and yeah, and again, and I feel like if we appeal to them, and I love that you just said like there's like a template, or you're working on a template for to help people what to say, because I think that could be a barrier to entry for people. Like, I don't really know what to say, I don't know even know who to reach out to. So thank you so much for that, because I think that just helps people like
Right.
just have a little more ease about it, and convenience factor, truthfully. But so amazing, and it's a testament to it's not that hard to make our voices known, and this is so important. And again, I just keep saying, like, imagine if this was one of your loved ones. This could happen to you, to someone that that's how this goes. And we all, live naively, I think, sometimes, or we see it, as I have on documentaries and all these things. And I'm gonna knock on some wood right now, but you just, it's scary,
It is.
to say the absolute least. So thank you so much for that. And then very last question, if there is anyone here listening right now, just to bring this back kind of to the grief component of it all, if there is somebody here listening who, whether they have been through a similar situation in their own right to you, or is just struggling with grief overall, kind of however you want to answer this, what piece of guidance, word of wisdom, tip, anything would you say to this person right now if they're wanting to move forward but don't believe it's possible? They feel really stuck. It just feels so out of reach right now. Like, what would you say to that person?
in the deepest parts of my grief, and it does come in waves, okay? I'm not going to
Yeah.
sugarcoat this, but there's this
Yeah.
Greek goddess that I'm obsessed with that I found, and her name is the Greek goddess Akeso, and she's the goddess of the journey of healing. She's not the cure. And I love that. I thought it was so beautiful. I found it in a hard time in 2020, riding the waves of the healing journey. And it just stuck out to me because I was like, yeah, that's it. It's messy and it's
Love
hard. And
that.
my greatest teachers, he lost both of his legs in Iraq, and he's now a yoga teacher. He actually taught me how to share my story and the healing powers. But he tells me his teacher told him, in order to heal, you have to feel. And I really didn't want to hear that for a long time, but
You're like, anything else, please?
if you're going through it, and then I did though, you have to be brave enough to feel, but you have to feel the tears, and the tears, I know for me, and if anyone's listening that to whatever grief that you're going through, like some days they feel endless, and then you think that they're gone and that you won't be able to have it, and you wake up the next day and there's more, and you're like, how will I ever stop? But you will, and you will. And they're, feeling and healing and processing it. It might not be yoga for you, but find something or a community or anything that starts to make you reconnect to that spark and that light that's within all of us. And the journey is very hard, but it's also so beautiful. And my last thing is you can live a life of not just where you survive. You actually can live a life where you thrive, no matter what you've come from. So I just want to leave with that, just to know, but we have to do the work, right?
Yes, you are taking the words right out of my mouth. I literally feel like you're me on my podcast and saying like, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving and living this beautiful life. And I know there's probably people there that are like, ugh, you guys are ridiculous. Like, I don't believe it. I always say, keep this in the back of your mind for later, because it was things like that. And it was encouragement like that. Even if I did not want to believe it at the time, even if I was like kind of closed off to it or whatever, hearing it enough times and hearing enough amazing people like you with these horrendously crazy and traumatic stories, continuing to live and not just figuring out the day to day, but then actually like having such a beautiful purpose. And not that everyone has to go do some crazy, amazing and big thing and finding this purpose. That purpose is whatever it looks like for you. But if you see enough of that around you, and that's why I think community is so important, you get lifted up, and then people lift you up, and you want to lift other people up, and that's how we raise the like vibration and energy of the world, right? And so it's important, and it's those little baby step, those micro moments, but they matter. And that thriving and sort of finding joy again and all of that, like I preached that hardcore. So I'm so glad you said that. And I'm glad it's someone else that's not just me preaching that for once. So,
I love that you say that too, but you're right. It's a journey, okay? But it's possible. And that's the light.
That's it. It's possible. I love that. Well, let's end that there, because that is like such a high note. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on today. This is like a power pack conversation. First of all, I mean, again, there's like so many avenues of your story we could go down, but thank you so much again for your vulnerability and sharing this with us. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing, your book, just all of the advocacy. Like, the world needs more people like you. And I genuinely, really, really mean that. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your story and your wisdom with all of us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you for having me. I'm honored, and thank you for giving a platform for these conversations. It's so important for us to not feel so alone. It connects us. So that's because of you. Yep. So I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.